What is going on, survivors? This is Hard with Harv's Corner. For today's mod review, we're actually going to go over one that we use pretty much on most of the build videos we do during the ARK playthroughs that we use, and that is Superstructures. Now, Superstructures mod is pretty much like S+. So if you're familiar with S+, then you're pretty much going to be familiar with about 99.9% of the things that you're going to see on here. But if you're not, S+ was a mod originally added in to just make things simpler, better, and more efficient as far as ARK playthrough goes. It added a lot of things that kind of streamlined the day-to-day grinding with ARK and added a lot of little helpers along the way, and also made the structures a bit more user-friendly with its snap points. It was an awesome mod that I think everyone pretty much anywhere playing PC ARK had this mod running if they had to. The problem that I noticed, and that I think the community start to see too, is the S+ really wasn't quite as updated as frequently, or maybe not quite as often over the time. But you're also dealing with a game that's, 5 years old, so it's kind of to be expected that those mod creators might be moving on to different things, maybe just not have the time, or enter Superstructures. So Superstructures is essentially the same thing. It just revamped a tiny bit, and it's still been pretty closely supported. So I'm going to kind of go through this for the most part as if you haven't used either one of the two, just to kind of explain the basics. But basically, so let's start with this foundation blocks that we're on, right? So these are SS foundations. Now, everything that is SS in this mod is the Superstructures version of it. And it's definitely easier to be careful when you're crafting these things, because you can still craft like a regular stone foundation, but you want to make sure you're crafting the SS stone foundation to actually get the added benefits. Now, the added benefits to this, obviously you can pick these things up. You have the option to pick them up, but you can also snap these on top of each other. So they snap right on top of each other, and that's just the foundations. You'll find that ceilings and walls and doorways and things like that snap a lot easier. Dino gates don't need fence foundations. They'll just snap to the edges. Roofing is a lot easier to do. Everything is streamlined. It snaps much better. The spiral staircases don't knock you down when you're going down the side of them. Like, it's just incredibly user friendly. So there is a plethora of things that this mod goes over and makes easier and adds, and it's really awesome. We're going to go over some of the big things that, at least things that really stood out to me, that again also apply to the S+ mod, but since using Superstructures, I think I'm going to stick with it over S+, mainly because it just seems to be a little bit supported a little bit better. But we're just going to go over some of the things here and then kind of go through the Ingram list of some of the things that really stand out. So really just to kind of go over some of this, these are the new farm plots, and these are like these seamless crop plots. Now obviously it looks like there's a border around it, and these do actually snap to foundations and ceilings. The square one does perfectly, and the triangle one can kind of move around with it. It's basically treated as a large crop plot, though actually large, but you can't put like plant action stuff like that inside of it. So you can still grow any crop out of it, but you can't grow like the special plants out of it. But one of the cool things with these guys is you're actually able to, when I'm selecting it, is you can actually change the model and remove some of the sides. So basically, I'm trying to exit out of the game, but you can use that to remove some of the sides. So you can basically connect these together and have one big, it looks like one big crop plot. So aesthetically, it's really cool. And I'm going to fall off here, man. I'm just not with it today. But yeah, so the definitely different farm crop plots, and yeah, you also have the option to lock a lot of these things, and the ability to just simply pick all this stuff up is pretty awesome too. These two things are pretty useful as well. So we have the blueprint maker, and this is the this SS blueprint maker, and essentially what you can do is convert structures into blueprints. So you can throw a structure in here and convert it into a blueprint, so you have it. This one is actually a converter, which is nice. So let's say you made regular foundations by accident and you're like, crap, I really needed SS foundations. Well, you just plug it into here and you can transfer it over. It also works the other way around. Now, you can actually turn, vanilla into SS or SS into vanilla, either or. Now, that's dependent on what it costs to make the thing. So the things have to cost the same. So the vanilla version and the SS version have to cost the same amount of resources, or else it actually won't work on the converter. But most things do, so you're really not going to run into that problem too terribly often. So over here we have the item collector. So the item collector, at least in the SS, runs on gasoline. You throw gasoline in here, turn it on, and you can actually show and range and tell you can. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do with it. Specifically, I wanted to show range, and anything that gets the show range option will give you this blue mesh of everything inside that it can actually do. So the item collector will collect essentially anything that pops up on the ground. So anything that gets tossed on the ground, so like poop, you can have it pick up feces by itself and automatically cycle it over to a dung beetle. Does it all for you. Just eggs that just drop on the ground, it'll pick those things up. Snow owl pellets, if you have those, it'll pick those up. The acatina paste, the paste that just drops, not the stuff that you collect, it'll actually pick all those up as well. It'll pick all the stuff up that just falls on the ground. Gotcha crystals, it'll pick those up too. And you can regulate it and set it to do what you want to do. It makes your day-to-day operation so much easier. You don't have to run around and pick any of that up. This thing just does it for you, sucks it all up like a vacuum, and then you can just walk up and pull the stuff out of it. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space, so you can sit this right by all your storage stuff and make it a hell of a lot easier on yourself. Moving over, this is the hatchery, the SS hatchery. So this basically eliminates it doesn't necessarily eliminate the need for ACs, but it eliminates the need for you to babysit the eggs for a longer period. So what this does is it picks up fertilized eggs. So if it sees a fertilized egg on the ground, it'll snatch it up and throw it in its inventory. And while this thing is running, it'll incubate it all the way down to 1% for you. So when you pull the egg out, you only have 1% of incubation to do, and that's it. So usually you can drop the egg and it's going to hatch pretty quickly after that. You don't need to stand and watch it for however long you have your egg hatch speed set to. But this actually uses re-fertilizer for fuel instead. Now, I'm going to stop right there before I move farther with any of this stuff. Each individual thing that I'm going to talk to you about, at least right here, has its own special fuel source. But if you're more end game and you have access to a tech generator, all of this stuff can actually be powered by a tech generator as well. So that's the hatchery. Super useful for hatching eggs. And like I said, you'll still need AC, stuff like that, to get that 1% of the egg done. But you don't need to sit around and wait for them. Plus, this means you can have creatures just sitting around on mating and not have to watch them all the time, because the egg will automatically get sucked up into this guy and it won't lose any of its health. So going over to the animal tender. So this little bunny rabbit guy, he runs on kibble, and he will actually collect things that passively get produced in certain creatures' inventory. So this one's great for the actual acatina paste that the snails make in their inventory, because they cap out and they can't make very much. They can only make a certain amount of it at a time. This will eliminate that because it'll cycle it all into that. So things that passively produce items in their inventory, this guy will just suck right up and store it in its inventory, which is amazing. Because like I said, there's a lot of most creatures that produce things passively have a cap, and they'll only produce a certain amount of it. Always going back to this little guy will mean that it's constantly producing things for you, which is insanely beneficial. Moving over is the domesticated beehive. This thing is awesome because it doesn't sting me when I try to open it up. And you still put rare flowers in it, it still produces honey for you, but it doesn't actually sting you. Now, the cool other part to this is that the beehive, you use giant bee honey to make it, so you don't actually have to have a bunch of giant bees. You really just need to tame maybe one giant bee to get your original hive going. Or, use a bear, raid some beehives. Basically, you just need these resources, and then you can just craft them. You don't actually need to tame a giant bee to get to them, which is nice. And I said the added bonus of not being stung is pretty good as well. Moving over to the SS Nanny. The SS Nanny is probably one of the most useful things in this mod. And I do mean the most, oof. If you're breeding animals to fight anything or to do specific things and you're trying to get that 100% imprint, this is what does it. And again, all of these guys, like I said, you can show range to all of them. They have a pretty massive range to them. So, I mean, this is a pretty big area that it can handle. And so anything inside of that range would be set to it. Now, she runs off of giant bee honey, or again, by a tech generator. But what this will do is auto imprint everything for you. It'll auto imprint. You get 100% imprint. If your baby is there within range of her while it's growing up, it will have 100% imprint. It doesn't matter if it wants walks, if the baby wants kibble, if the baby wants you to do back handsprings while jamming out to singing in the rain. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. This Chico will make it so that you don't have to worry about it, and you'll get 100% imprint, which is hella useful regardless of what your maturation or imprint scale is set to. It will always be 100%. Even if the baby hatches outside of its zone of control and it's 50% grown up, you can put it back into the circle, into the effective range of her, and she will catch up where she left off at, so that you still get 100% imprint bonus. So hella useful, amazingly useful, this one. And she'll also feed babies for you too. Normally baby creatures won't eat out of a trough until they're 10% matured. You can actually put food in her inventory and she'll feed them for you. So you don't even have to worry about that part either. Moving on down to the gardener. The gardener runs off of beer, actually, which is kind of funny to me. But she'll actually pull all the crops from all your crop plots and stow them inside of her. And she extends the spoil timer of those crops like better than a fridge. She'll actually store them in there, which is awesome because now, again, when your crop plots cap out, you don't have to worry about it. She'll actually just hold them, and all the crops will just beam right into her inventory, and you won't have to worry about it. Again, nice because it's less maintenance. You don't have to worry about pulling the crops out, put them in a fridge to make sure that it keeps producing crops for you. Don't have to worry about it. She'll take care of all that for you. Her, and combined with this guy, basically it automates your whole farming need. You don't really need to do it a whole lot. The farmer actually runs on Callian soup, which is an oddball one, but I kind of like some of these because I feel like a lot of these cases I don't use some of this stuff, so now it kind of forces me to use it, which I don't know, I kind of like it. But the farmer actually, what he will do is pull fertilizer from your dung beetle, from your compost bin, from anything else, and distribute it all to your crop plots whenever it can. So he's going to make sure, as long as you make sure you got fertilizer, it's always going to make sure that your crops have fertilizer in it. So you can see where these things are starting to chain off of each other, right? So let's say you have a dung beetle and you have some other dinosaurs that are just sitting around pooping. The item collector will pick the poop up. The item collector will distribute it to the dung beetle. The gardener will pull the fertilizer off the dung beetle and distribute it to the crops. And the gardener will in turn grab all the crops from the crop plots. So as long as you have poop coming in, you don't need to worry about your crops anymore. You can just kind of sit back and let it all happen. So again, being able to automate a lot of this stuff is incredibly useful. And then, these three, with the exception of the beehive, of course, these three things right here make item collecting and breeding pretty much in the bag. Like, it just kind of does everything for you. It makes it really, this mod really shines for small tribes or even solo play, where all this stuff is automated for you and you don't have to break your back trying to get it all done. One of the last ones here, not terribly important, but kind of nice to have, is the sheep herder. She will shear ovis. If you have ovis near her in range of her, she will automatically shear the wool and stow it in her inventory. So you can always walk up to her and she'll always have that inventory inside. Just pretty crazy. It's easy access to fur. You really just need an ovis in range of her and she'll actually do all that. I think she runs actually just on raw meat. Yeah, she just runs on raw meat. But you can change a couple of little settings, what they pick up, how they distribute stuff, how that all works. But this right here, especially like what's in this window right here, really just automates so much stuff for you in your day-to-day doings of Ark. In the beginning, when you fresh start out and you're naked on a beach, yeah, you got to work for it. You should probably have to work for it. But when you get to the mid or end game, some of this stuff is just, some of the harvesting and breeding and things like that, you're just kind of going through the motions. So it's kind of nice to be able to have something like this to, like I said, just really automate all this stuff for you. So that's really what I had out here, but I do want to go through some of the things that are actually in the Ingram list here, and I'm in GCM mode, so I have everything that's SS in my inventory. I can just craft it right here, right now, but I'm also not going to drag you through 100 years of going through all the content, but we'll have a link to this mod in the Steam Workshop so that you can check that out. And essentially, this mod picks up S Plus and runs with it, is what we're looking for. And they've done quite a lot of updates even recently. So a couple things to note before I actually just type in SS and just show you everything that's in here. They added a bunch of different tools in here that are incredibly useful. Things like the demo gun. It looks like a pistol and you can just pick up structures or blow up structures from a distance. So much easier. You have a repair gun that you can actually just repair items as long as you have the stuff to repair in your inventory. Certain configurators are pretty awesome. So if you have a bunch of turrets that you're trying to set the same exact way, well, you can just set one, use this gun, copy its settings, and and paste the settings essentially on all your other turrets, so you don't have to worry about it. Euthanization gun, you can actually just mark tamed creatures and kind of kill them instantly. Transparency, kind of like same principle as the turret. You can copy and paste settings with transparency of glass, certain things like that. Transfer tool, but all of these things just make things so much easier. Anyway, so let's just hit SS just so you guys see what I'm talking about in the search bar. There's quite a long list of things. And a lot of this is the same structure. It's just the SS version, which means it's going to be stackable, have a couple extra snap points, and overall just be easier to build with more times than not. There are a couple different exceptions, like things like the hover skift actually gets a couple of different upgrades, as you can see right here. It can actually be picked up, and it can actually hold 10% more fuel. So there's actually certain benefits to having some of this stuff. All of the SS structures, your storage and everything like that actually has a global way of picking it up and using it. So let's say I had storage boxes like lined up across here, right? And and I have all the resources to make hide armor in those boxes, but they're not in my inventory. If I open up my inventory and I actually search for, hide armor that I'm trying to make, if I hit this button up here, it'll actually pull all those resources from the storage bins into my inventory to allow me to craft these things. It would also do it if I had all those bins in a smithy right in front of me, provided these are all SS structures. So they all kind of share the same inventory, and you can pick and pull remotely without having to run back and forth between them, which is super, super, super useful. I'm sure there's going to be a long list of things that I'm not explaining to you, but definitely check this mod out if you haven't already. And even if you are an S Plus user, I highly advise you switch over to this stuff and at least give it a try. Let me know what you think. The troughs in general, and this is the tech trough, but the troughs in general in SS have a wider range. They're effective way further out than the regular counterparts. The turrets get a little bit more configuration to them, and there's a bunch of different turrets. It's not just tech turrets. You get a slew load of a bunch of different turrets. Things like your storage boxes actually clip together. They can snap together, so you get like that perfect alignment with them. If you've watched any of my build videos with S Plus or SS, you know that I do that a lot when I'm building interior design, sometimes because I want that neat stacked up look inside of there. But man, there's so much I wish I could tell. I mean, I could probably go over this whole thing. I would just be recording this for the next six hours probably. I don't really want to do that. So yeah, one of the bigger things to talk about is the irrigation and the electrical systems as well within SS, which again is pretty much how S Plus is. So pipes and things like that can actually be hidden when you place them. You can toggle to hide them so you actually don't see them. So if you're running wires like crazy all over your house and they're annoying the crap out of you, you can actually hide them all and they won't show up. They'll still function, they'll still work, you just won't have to see them. And there's a bunch of different types of extra types of piping and irrigation and electrical wire to help you out there as well. Scrolling down, we have dynamic gateways. I'm actually going to make one of these so you can see what I'm doing here. So the dynamic gates, you can actually set, you can preset the whole structure to it. You do the gate and the gateway, and there's specific ingredients you got to put into it. But for instance, you can just, let's do, I don't know, Shift G or just G. Yeah. So you can actually you can custom set the height, the width, and even the material to be a custom fit for whatever build you're trying to do. And you place that down, you put the resources in it, it crafts it. Then you come back with the gate, you try to snap the gate in, you add the resources, and you're good. So you actually have access to all that stuff on its own, which is pretty gnarly. Highly, 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 highly useful. Especially when you're doing like custom builds or custom walls and you need to have things lined up a specific way. It does make things incredibly easier for you. We talked about a lot of the electrical outlets, a lot of the different turrets down here. So like I said, you have a laser turret, you have an auto turret, you have the standard auto turret. You have a minigun turret, which just shoots a lot faster. It actually uses the advanced sniper ammo. You have a flamethrower turret, you have the rocket turret, you have a ballista turret, a cannon turret, and a tranquilizing turret. This one actually shoots the shocking tranquilizer darts, which is hella useful sometimes. The SS version of these structures really just means they can be locked and pin coded, but it also means that they can pull resources from SS storage structures remotely without having to fish them back and forth. It'll make your life a lot easier. The industrial grinder can actually be used to make things, so we can actually place one of these. This one's actually pretty cool and highly useful for just about any map you're playing on. So it does all the things that a grinder does, but then it can actually convert things to certain maps. So if you're on a map that doesn't have access to the aberration stuff, but you need fungal wood, well, you can actually convert it using what it needs, or the certain colored gems, whatever you need for that as well. And it all has all the way up to Genesis. You can get specific Genesis stuff made this way by providing stuff that you would get from essentially like basically if you get it from the island, you can use that stuff to make this stuff. So it's the base resources to make the advanced stuff, and it also allows you to make some spoiled meat and prime meat that way too. So super useful. You can make a lot of different things off of it, and you can convert things from different maps, different DLCs, all back and forth together. So the grinder is incredibly more useful than just for grinding resources down as it standardly is. I would have to say those are probably some of the more big ticket items. There's a lot of little stuff in here. There's a lot of little stuff. For instance, like the standing torch is another one. Like your lighting sources, like your primitive lighting sources, your standing torches, and your wall torches. It applies to them as well. Let me place one down here. What these will do standardly is when the map becomes nighttime, they'll turn on by themselves and they don't need fuel sources. But you can also change all the settings. You can change the intensity of the fire, whether it's on or off, how intense the fire is, or you can set it on and off and tell it when to turn on and when to turn off. You can also throw any colored dye in here and change the color of the fire too. So it's a pretty sweet option, and it works with the standing torches and it works with the SS wall torches as well. I love it. I love S+, so obviously I would love this, and this to me, as much as I love S+, is clearly a better version. Now, I'm not entirely certain, and it may just be my ignorance, but I'm not entirely certain if it's the same mod creators or if it's, it's just somebody, went to kind of just took the S+ and ran with it. I'm not sure exactly what the story is. All I know is that S+ open source mod is still out there, and Superstructures is over here. So again, I would highly advise checking it out. I would highly advise using it, and I figured we would kind of go over it because I know that in a lot of our tutorial videos we talked about S+ and SS. So I figured, why not? For the few people that probably aren't, for the very few people that might not be using it, I figured that would be a pretty safe thing to do. But that's the SS mod, the Superstructures mod for Ark. Use it. If you're using a modded server, use it. You won't regret it. You absolutely will not regret it. It stacks well with pretty much anything. I've used this and S+ with God knows how many different mods, and I've never had any problems with it. It does amazingly well with everything, and it plays really nice. It seems to be very, very stackable. But yeah, Superstructures. So if you liked the video, please throw a like out there. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you can see when the next videos are coming out. And feel free to follow me here. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitch. We Twitch live stream Fridays and Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. And as always, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for hanging out. And until next time.